What's up, Bulldogs? All right, welcome back. I have a really awesome guest today, someone who really inspired me, who really, I think I would say that his writing really set me on a different path in life, really helped me to realize what it is to be a man, and really shook a lot of the notions I had about manhood and masculinity to its core. He's someone that, hopefully you've read some of his books. It's Jack Donovan, and today what we're going to be talking about is the 4 virtues that make you a man. So welcome, Jack.
Thanks for having me.
Those of you that don't know Jack, haven't read his books, the book that I was talking about was The Way of Men, and then he's also got another really good. I think this is a series, right? The More Complete Beast and Becoming a Barbarian, or would you consider it?
Yeah, one follows the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you should start with The Way of Men, and then Becoming a Barbarian is kind of one tangent, and then the More Complete Beast, I think, pulls some ideas together because. I wrote The Way of Men in 2012. So
right.
I've had a lot of time to think about different things in between. And
yeah.
Kind of just develop some ideas.
And I like the introduction of, or the incorporation of the philosophy. So a lot of my viewers really are, I'm big into philosophy, so I think they'll appreciate I think it's in More Complete Beast, right? Where you get more into the philosophical.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole book is almost a commentary on Nietzsche.
Yeah,
and applying some of the ideas that Nietzsche had to masculinity.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, like, your books were really inspiring to me. They really changed a lot of, I can remember, like, there are certain books that you read and it's like you can remember where you're reading that book. And I remember being on an airplane, taking a flight, and working through The Way of Men, and just so many of the concepts, like, just completely shifting my viewpoint, right? I think really the thing that really shook me the most was the idea of the difference between being a good man and being a man. And like, there's a part in the book where you talk about how, like, even the bad guys, even like the terrorists, like, you can't say that those guys weren't manly. And that really, like, it really changed my whole worldview to a large degree.
Cool. Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, that's the thing that I think I did that no one else did, is to make masculinity amoral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think when everyone talks about masculinity, they start talking about what you should do and what kind of man you should be, and then you're kind of not talking about masculinity anymore. You're talking about philosophy or religion or something like that. So masculinity is its own thing.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like I said, I think this is these books are books that in fact, the primary book, one of the primary books I recommend for men is Way of Men, and then Rollo Tomasi's Rational Male. And so I feel like if you read those 2 books, you'll have a really good grasp on. And I guess the third one would be David Data's Way of the Superior Man. So those 3 books are basically the ones that I usually recommend for guys. But
yeah, Rollo's a solid dude. He's really has his head right.
Yeah, that was another one of those books that really changed my mindset a lot. So let's dig into it. Let's talk about the 4 virtues of being a man. What's the first virtue?
Okay, well, where they come from, because that's what everybody asks first, right? Where'd you get these ideas, right?
Yeah.
And it was really a logic problem in terms of, like, looking at masculinity and not worrying about the morality part of it, but what has always been true. Mm-hmm. Not what is true, what is the new masculinity, or what was masculinity in, like, 17th century Spain, or what it was masculinity in Africa. These things are always true. And to get what is always true, I think that you have to go back to what do we all have in common? Mm. And throughout our evolutionary history, most of our time on this planet, men work together in kind of survival bands and little teams. And part of being a man, the reason why we care about being a man is it has to do with being on that team and being a good player on that team. And that team, had to go, fight bears and kill aurochs, and it had to, obviously defend against other men. And I always used to use the example of the zombie apocalypse. Like, if you're locked in this room with 5 guys right now, what do you need from them?
Right. Okay.
Because those things don't change. You start looking you start looking at their characteristics. What do we need for these guys? And so that's, and also, our biology. These characteristics also come from our biology. The things that make us different from women because that's the tricky part about talking about the virtues of masculinity, is that people start talking about when they get into these moral things like, humility. Well, women can be humble. That's not specific to being a man, but I feel like these things are very specific to being a man. So the first one is strength. That'd be the first virtue. And that's easy because we are naturally stronger than women. That's one of the things that makes us different. So that is the essence of being a man. It's part of being a man. It's strength and all the things that go with that. If I had to change it right now, I'd change it to might, just because it's a little more all encompassing, because it's also the fastest runner and the guy who can fight the best and all those kind of things. So strength is one of the key masculine virtues. And I think that it's been true always and everywhere that when men judge each other, well, no one's ever said that weak guy over there, he's clearly the manliest dude in this group.
Right. Exactly.
That's just not something that anyone's ever said. So that's, I think an easy virtue because it's easy to understand.
And when you say strength or might, even in this case, do you mean physical or do you also mean mental?
Well, I think mental, is part of it, but I think it's a base thing of strength, physical strength. Okay, that is one of the things that makes us different. Obviously, like there is, the ability and the will to apply that strength, which is a little bit different. But strength and the ability to use it, I guess. And the second one would be courage.
Okay, yeah.
And again, same thing, rooted in biology. Men are less risk averse than women. They're more likely to take risks. Nature takes risks with us. We're disposable compared to women. Like women are very precious, and we have like millions and millions of sperm all the time, and we could make 100 babies for one of us. So we could repopulate the earth if you had a handful of dudes. But the women, you need X amount of women. And so courage is something that you would need in that survival band. Right. You need men who are willing to take risks for the good of the group. And the man who is always afraid, again, nowhere ever, I don't care if you're in India or Pakistan or anywhere, no one has ever said that guy over there who's always afraid and will never take a risk, he's the manliest dude in this group.
Right.
Exactly, no one's ever said that. So that's why these things work, because they're universal. And so courage is obviously something that's rooted in masculinity and always has been. And and then the third one is mastery. And I think when we talk about all these virtues too, you got to remember that like women can have all of these. Women can be good at things. Women can be strong. Women can be courageous, but no one requires it of them. Like no one's like, that really sexy girl over there, I wonder how much she can lift. Right. Like no one cares. They don't have to prove themselves in the same way because they have other value to men aside from whether they're strong or courageous. We don't care. But as far as mastery is another thing that men, if you're in a survival band, the first thing you're going to look for is like strength and courage, and like what skills do these guys have? Right. Really good at who's useful, who can do anything. And the guy who can use a gun or make a bomb or do whatever might be the most useful guy, even though he's not the strongest. So it's we all have different characteristics in different amounts. So the engineer might be really useful in a particular situation. But men are required to be competent by other men, and men respect that in each other. And again, like women can be competent and clearly are in many ways, but no, women have other value aside from being competent. That makes good sense for them to be competent, but they don't have to be.
Yeah, I'm thinking of MacGyver. Like, MacGyver was a man. I mean, he was pretty manly, and he was, he wasn't exactly tough, but
but he could get it done. And a lot of those guys, I mean, useful skills go a long way. I mean, I've been with guys out in the woods, and it's like sometimes all I'm good for is carrying stuff. But the guy who's really good at starting a fire or building a tent, or the guy who's good with knots, he may be more useful than me, and I'll just carry stuff. So, and then the final virtue of masculinity that I have in the way of men is honor. And honor is a moral thing in a lot of societies, and so that becomes very confusing. It kind of got channeled up through Christianity in the West. And so it becomes personal honor versus public honor. But the honor I'm talking about is your commitment to being respected by that group of men.
Mm-hmm.
And your reputation among them. And the reason why that matters, I think, in a survival band is that if you don't care what those guys think of you, you're now untrustworthy. Because honor is what takes over when courage fails in many ways. When you're scared, but all these guys are looking at you, that's honor. That's where honor kicks in. And like, I have to do this anyway. And you can see it, I guess. I've never used this example before, but I mean, with kids, playing, daring each other to do something, there's so many times where, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to jump across that thing, but everyone else is, and I'll look like a loser if I don't do it. And I care about their opinion, so I'm going to do it. And that's kind of the basis of honor. And, it just becomes a more adult thing as you become more of an adult. But I mean, that caring about what other guys think of you in your group. Now, we live in a big world now, and I absolutely don't care what every guy on the planet thinks of me. I can't. And I would go insane trying. And, you can't, you're on the internet, I'm on the internet. I can't care whatever YouTube commenter says, I have to care about the guys who are close to me, whose opinions I respect. And so you have to choose the group of people that you can be influenced by, because otherwise it's just everybody, and that's a mess. But yeah, so those are the 4 tactical virtues that I lay out in The Way of Men as being key to what manliness is.
Okay, yeah, and it makes sense. I think also, I like the idea of that big concept of the separation of morality, especially with something like honor. It's like gang members that are doing necessarily bad things, that are dealing drugs or robbing people or committing homicide. They still have a sense of honor within that group. Yeah. Even though their honor looks very different than the Christian traditional honor, what we would describe to that as what I think most people would call honor. They would say they're acting dishonorable, but they're acting honorable within that group.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The honor is applied to the group's morality, not society's morality. Not the wider morality. I mean, the group still has morals. Even that gang has well, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to talk to this person. And that group has morals too. They're just not everyone else's.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm trying to think if there's, those pieces seem to be the universal pieces that make, and I like the idea, that was, I think, one of the transforming things for me too, was to realize that it's based on the group of men, and the idea that you're not trying to impress women. You're trying to gain status within the group of men for the sake of being in that group. And that women, because I think a lot of people try to define manhood or masculinity by attraction from women, and that the key attribute is where the man stands in the status of other men.
Right. And really those two things go together in a lot of ways. One of the things that I think was unique about The Way of Men that called out, and evolutionary psychologists and biologists and so forth, they're used to looking at animals. And so they always look at, men competing to impress women, and that's how it's organized, because that's what animals do. But one of the things I said in The Way of Men is exactly that men compete. It's more like, the guys who are competing to be on the football team, because if you're on the football team, then all the girls like you.
Right.
And that's in teen movie kind of drama. That's how that works out. But I mean, you can see it all throughout life. I mean, if you're a high status man and you're respected by other men, then women are more attracted to you.
Right. Exactly.
And so, and they're attracted to the same virtues in a man that the gang likes, that the primal gang likes, that your honor group in many cases like. I mean, if a man is strong and courageous, women are attracted to that too.
Right.
So, but there was actually a study that came out recently. I think that I haven't read the whole study. I just read kind of some of the snippets and headlines and so forth. But I think they've actually now found some research that actually confirms that women are more attracted to men, and they're selected by the men first. That these groups select the men first, and then the women are then attracted to the men who are in that group.
Okay, so they're saying specifically that it's not the women that are elevating the status of those men that they find attractive. It's the other men, the acceptance of that,
Yeah.
the elevation of that group. Yeah,
It all feeds back into itself, though. I mean, like,
yeah,
if you have a high status woman, you know, the guy who has the hot girl in the group then gains status from having the hot girl. So it's all related. But the thing is that everything in the world that men do hasn't always been to impress women, and in fact, most of the time it wasn't. Especially think of all the times that people have had betrothed marriages and
right,
things like that, where you're just that's already settled. You don't need to impress women at all at that point. That's settled. So you spend your whole life impressing men.
True.
And actually, that's an interesting thing with women too. Is that like I think men know this that women don't like fashion. Men don't really care about it. That's women impressing each other. Right. They're competing with each other for their own status hierarchy. Who looks best and whatever. And a lot of guys would be like, well, all that's too much. I don't really care about all that, but it's important to other women. And so that's, we all compete. We compete within our own like gender groups.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Now, what do you think about like the opposite? So I guess if we, maybe one test also would be if you apply these traits, the 4 virtues of manhood to a woman, does that make her seem less feminine or right? So I can think of, not to pick on anyone, but like professional MMA fighters that are women.
Sure. That's what I was going to say too.
Okay, yeah, like Ronda Rousey. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say anything bad against Ronda Rousey because she'll kick my ass. But she's a badass, but she seems more masculine to me than feminine, right? I'm sure she's got a feminine side, but
sure, yeah. I mean, I think that you're right that those qualities generally do subtract from womanliness, or sense of femininity. Because they're feminine. I mean, they're opposites. Masculinity and femininity are opposites, and so like a woman who's displaying all these manly traits, she may have some other feminine qualities, and in many cases, what's weird is that they do. I spent a lot of times hanging with like powerlifters and strong men, and the strong women, even the ones that are like taking some drugs that are making them basically men, they really just want a stronger man to date.
Yeah.
They're really just, they still want to be women, but they've just transformed themselves in this way. So, maybe that's the case with like female MMA fighters. They just need a scarier dude.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think that's even just the case in general society today. Like a lot of women complain today that men are unattracted by women that have power and money and high status types of jobs. And I think it creates a difficulty for them because it's not that the men aren't attracted to them necessarily. It's that they're only attracted now to men that are more successful, more powerful, have higher status than they do. And so they're kind of placing themselves outside of the market because they have to now find someone like you said. I think the woman who's a really strong power lifter, in order to feel like she's a woman, she needs a guy that's twice her size, that's right. And there's not too many of those guys that are going to be a lot bigger than that woman. So
yeah, exactly. And they always say sex is about power, and it always is. It usually is, and that creates a weird dynamic. If you have a woman who's terrifying and a guy who's just kind of there, that's not gonna. I don't think the chemistry is going to be there.
So what do you think about, today? I think, well, I'm just curious in your general opinion, do you feel like today that more young men, and I use the term loosely in this sense, sure, are not becoming men? Like, do you feel like this is a trend that we're moving towards?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been a thing for a long time. People say that there are no initiations into manhood and initiations, and then they try and create artificial initiations. And the problem I have with that, I mean, it can kind of work, but initiation is initiation into something. Right. in primitive societies, it's initiation into a role. And we don't have a well-defined role for men in modern society because there's all these different groups and all these different sets of values. And so there's nothing really for these men to be initiated into. And the other thing is that they're, in many cases, almost completely raised by women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, all these virtues, they're perishable. I mean, like, you can be strong, but only strong for so long. And if people push you to be stronger, you're going to be stronger.
Right.
And the same thing with courage. I mean, there's a baseline of how courageous you are, probably. And then if you keep pushing that boundary and testing yourself, you're going to be more courageous. And if you're never pushed or tested, then, you're going to start with whatever you had. And the same thing with strength, the same thing with mastery. Obviously, if you never try to get better at anything, you're never going to get better at anything. And all these things are, things that you have to build up. And there's no one really building those things up in the young men. And in many cases, their main influences in their lives are all women, whether it's a single mother thing, or even if that's not the case, most school teachers are female.
Right.
So that's a very feminine environment that they're in for most of their lives. So I think that more than anything, people used to say men need to find their feminine side. And I think that's from a completely different society, because I think that they already know their feminine side. They're surrounded by it all the time. They need to find their masculine side. And I think that they need to do that to become the best versions of themselves.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. I would strongly agree. That seems to be the case. A lot of my audience and stuff. I mean, even my own journey. Right. I don't think I wouldn't have really called myself a man, like, looking back now, until I hit about 33, 34 years old. And that should have happened sooner, but I feel like it's being pushed further. And a lot of guys are never even having that experience. But that was the point when I felt like I stepped into my own. But there was really no one guiding me. I kind of had to come to these revelations and sort of, chart my own course to find that, but because there was no path.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no structure for it in modern society. Yeah.
Now, what do you think for guys that, it's definitely a reoccurring theme on my channel and with Bulldog Mindset is teaching guys how to become men. What do you think is a good way? There's a lot of guys out there that are, incel or, whatever the, black pill type of guys that are very, very despondent in life. They don't have any hope. They're not really masculine. They don't see themselves as being able to be, top tier guys. So they think their life is hopeless. What path could they take? Like, what steps can they do in order to find their masculinity?
Well, to begin with, I think that's kind of, if you don't, not trying because you're not going to be the top tier, or you think you might not be the top tier, is kind of, an easy cop out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because, okay, I started this stuff at, I've talked to this guy about all the time. I started this stuff, I figured all this stuff out in my mid 30s.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I started, my options are already closed down, for a lot of things. I mean, I'm not going to be, if I would have been figuring this out at 23, I probably would have tried to be an MMA fighter, or
right,
something like that. Or, I know a lot of guys who are like in the military and have all these experiences from that. And, but at my age, I wasn't going to do any of that. But that doesn't mean I just get to give up, right? I get to just, I don't have to be manly. I can just, sit in my office and drink cocktails and get fat, I mean, and just be a kind of piece of garbage. I mean, you still need that, I think, just for yourself.
Right.
And I think that's what I fight that too. It's like, well, if I'm not going to be top tier at that, then why am I bothering with it? But, there's still, I think, something you get spiritually out of that kind of competition that you have with other men. And just because you're not going to be the top one, and we never all get the top one. That's not how nature works.
Right.
We never all get to be the top dog all the time. And that's why I think it becomes frustrating with these guys like, when it talks about like alpha, which is, in my mind, I don't like alpha because it's a position.
Mm-hmm.
And it changes all the time. If I walk into a room with Donald Trump, I'm not the alpha. I'm not in charge anymore. But with a bunch of guys, I walk into a corner of the library, I probably am the alpha.
Right.
So it changes all the time. And so, like, I don't think that's important, but the idea that you have to be the alpha, I think, just means that you have to display masculine traits and push yourself to become more masculine, because that's going to make you a better version of yourself. It's like, and in More Complete Beast, actually, I talked about it in a term that I think that really works. It's like, people say that masculinity isn't natural because you have to push it. Like, it's not who you really are. You have to just put on a mask, or you have to, like, because you have to be pushed. It's not real, like you're just faking it faking it to making it. And that's a big thing with feminists and so forth that they say about masculinity. It's not real. But it's your set of potentials, and every set of potentials has to be pushed. You could be musically talented, but you're not going to be a classical pianist unless you keep pushing yourself over and over and over and again. And maybe you're not going to be a classical pianist ever, but I bet you could learn to play a few songs on the piano. And that's, I think, what we have to do as men. I think we have these potentials that we're letting go to waste. And we have to do it for us. I think people always would be like, well, if there's a disaster, someone's going to need you. And that's a good reason to do things. If you have a family, you need to be able to take care of things. Or if you're just alone on the street, you need to be able to take care of yourself. But I think it's also for you. I think that men really need to see this as something that is going to make them better, and it's going to make them better in the rest of life. I mean, if you can carry yourself like someone who has been punched in the face before and can deal with that, you're going to have more gravitas. As a man, other men are going to respect you more.
Right.
If you carry yourself as someone who has negotiated those kind of situations.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. That makes a lot of sense, because I always talk about the idea of like I think there's three things that like every man needs in order to feel like a man. One of them is to be ready to go into battle, like to feel like they have the courage to be able to die or sacrifice their life or take the risk, get in the ring, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is that they're able to make their own money, be a self-made man, like be able to somehow, whether you're an entrepreneur or somehow just feel like you've made it on your own. And then the third one is to be able to be able to acquire women, to be able to not just have them, but to be able to have the courage to go up and cold approach, or to do something where you're actually actively involved in being able to acquire those resources, essentially. I guess that you could equate it that way. But I feel like if you don't have those things, you'll always feel incomplete. And that's the reason why I kind of drive towards it. It's like, I feel like if you're missing one of those pillars, you're going to feel incomplete as a man.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think that feminists have accused any advocates of masculinity of, is that, they see modern men as being, insecure and nervous and untested, and they are.
Yeah.
And, because you have to go out and do those things. And that's why I think men are a lot better when they're a little older, because they've been through a little more stuff, and they become a little bit more confident about who they are. But you have to, like, as far as, one thing that jumped out at me was, the supporting yourself. Mm-hmm. Men are good. We function as parts of groups, and we have to, and that's part of what we do. But you have to, in a group, you have to be able to carry your own weight. And I think in modern society and the way things are, I think that supporting yourself is what carrying your own weight looks like. Because if someone else is supporting you the entire time, then you never really feel like you're, carrying your own weight. You feel like a drain. On the group. And I think that for women, it's natural to be a drain. I mean, it's natural because they just, during the whole pregnancy process and childbirth and so forth, they are vulnerable, and they have to give up control to somebody else. That's part of what, they are. And that's part of their nature. And so it's more comfortable for them to be, to depend on somebody. But for men, if you're depending on everybody else, it makes you very nervous in a way, because you're, in that primal gang, you'd be like, well, I'm not carrying my own weight. I'm not doing anything. Everyone else is giving me things. When are they going to kick me out?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Or like when the resources get scarce, like, guess who's not eating? Like,
right.
It's the guy that's
you are the furthest from the kill, sir.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I think in terms of in what you're saying, like it occurs to me that women are born and men are made, because really, to be a woman, again, obviously women have their own difficulties that they struggle with, but a woman, like, even just when you think about it, just from a physique standpoint, right? All a woman has to do to look good, they've already got the shape for the most part. They just have to not get fat. Whereas a guy that wants to look good, oh my gosh, how many hours and hours of, like, I mean, you have to be dedicated to build a physique as a man. As a woman, I mean, some women build some, and they put in work and they build impressive physiques, but you didn't ever have to step a foot in the gym, and you could just have some nice curves.
If you're not inclined, if you're a woman and you're not inclined to carry a lot of weight,
yeah,
you just don't have to. You have to not eat a lot. That's basically all. I mean, men don't care. Again, if you have triceps with tone, that's only like some women that care about that. Like men don't care about that.
Right. Yeah, and even the other, I think the other things too, like you said, the other virtues that you have to train those things. It's like you have to like develop courage. Courage isn't something that most people are born with, and they develop that trait and strength and then but women are I think they maybe society today teaches them to not be feminine, but by nature they're feminine, whereas men by nature are not necessarily masculine. They have to develop those traits and become that, it seems like to me.
Yeah, I mean it's all part of our natural makeup and our natural drives, and we're going to be more that way than women are anyway. On a big curve, not every single man or every single woman, but we're going to be more that way anyway. But yeah, to again bring out that best potential, it takes work.
Now, what? Okay,
go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things that also stuck out to me in one of your books as well was basically the notion of basically fuck society. Like, I don't care where I don't care about making the world a better place or helping other people or what their agenda is. It's like my circle, my group of people, my family, whatever it is, that's who I care about. And I thought that was a really powerful concept, because there's so many people today that are even just that moral high ground. It's really hard to stand on that moral high ground unless you're, a lot of people are doing things because they feel like it's right for everyone and for society, instead of looking at their immediate circle, and they're actually neglecting their immediate circle. Where did that concept come from?
Well, I just think so many of these concerns that everybody has are way beyond human scale. Everyone wants to save the world. Well, actually, that's not way beyond your pay grade and mine and everybody else's. I mean, we're not. That's not what we're doing. Usually the people who are telling you that to save the world are selling something that they want you to buy, whether they want to take your money for some project that they have working on to make them feel better in their group. I mean, you think about like society women in like California or whatever, like a bunch of really high status women, hanging around the governor or something like that, who has the best charity program, they're competing with each other on a different scale and getting you involved in that, to be a little cynical in that way. But I think that, so much that we hear on the news, we never would have known about that 200 years ago, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, like you look at like school shootings and stuff like that, like, or any bad thing that happens thousands of miles away, we know about it right away. And so we have the sense that the world's closing in on us and bad things are happening all the time and whatever. But really, those things are beyond our control. So if we're talking about them all day, we're talking about things that don't matter to us. We're talking about, this basically gossip. Right. We're gossiping about this other group, that something else happened somewhere, and we're talking about it as if we have the power to change it, but we don't. And the things that you have the power to change, and this is some basic, stuff that you hear from a lot of people, is that, if you have your, if you change the stuff around you, you actually expand your influence. Whether if you are constantly worried about things over which you have absolutely no control, your actual influence in the world decreases, because you're just constantly worried about other people's business, really. And I mean, it's okay. I mean, obviously, if you have a cause that you want to contribute to, or if you have something that you care about that you think you can make an impact, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. I mean, it's not wrong, but I do think that we can't care about every single person everywhere. That's not within our ability to do that. And I think that pretending that we do is just, like I said, probably serving somebody's interests. We're being manipulated in some way, or pretending that we do is a way that people compete for moral status. They call it, virtue signaling. And because obviously, if you were in a small tribe of people, like most people were for most of history, if you're in a small group of people, your group has these morals, and these groups, and people compete with each other to display like I'm a better person, therefore higher value member of this group. And that's naturally part of what humans do. And now it just becomes like kind of naked, like manipulation. It's just a big signaling and a display.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that I think of all the times when something tragedy happens and then everyone changes their Facebook profile pictures to be, whatever. And it's like they don't really care.
France yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't care about France. You've never been there. You don't even know any French people. You probably make fun of French people. Like you don't care about France.
Exactly.
Like don't pretend you do. It's a lie. It's all ridiculous. It's all it's a stupid lie. And it's care about the things that you actually care about.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm in a total agreement with that. Now, you brought up the school shooting thing, which I thought was interesting. This is something also I'd be curious to get your opinion on. So one of the things I've been really where I think that we can actually do make an impact, again, but only to a certain group of people, is I feel like with all those the school shootings, like these kind of shootings, mass shootings that we've had, and kind of these violent things, and even a lot of even maybe stuff that you would classify into the Me Too arena, we're seeing these behaviors, in my opinion, from guys that are not very masculine men. And my cure to it, I think the world, I think femininity says, oh, it's because of toxic masculinity. Right. And in my mind, it's because it's an absence of masculinity, because a guy that has control over his life, that has access to women, to resources, that has respect and status, he doesn't go out and commit acts of violence.
Because he has a future.
Right.
I mean, because he feels like he's going somewhere. I mean, that school shooting thing, I mean, that's an expression of impotence. And so if he has power in the world and he's gaining power in the world, well, you don't want to lose that. So you want to keep going. But, if you have no power in the world and you don't feel like you ever will, and that's part of like kind of a high school mindset. That's the, same as Romeo and Juliet. It's been, all time when you're 15 or 16, the whole world is this small place that is never going to change. I think gay people actually had a slogan for a long time. It was like, it gets better. Like when you grow up, it's not as crappy as it is in junior high school or high school. And, that's very much, I think that's something that, we could definitely impress on younger people, as far as for young guys. You like, actually, you may hit your stride in your 30s.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, that's, I think a lot of guys do. I mean, I always joke that like, and now I look a certain way, but I mean, up until I was probably 35, if I would put a hat on with a brim, I looked like, I could be in a boy band. Like a lot of guys just don't grow into themselves until they get to like be like a certain age. And then all of a sudden you have power in the world, you have confidence, and you have money, and you have things going on. And then women who are the age of the women that you were going after when you're 25, they're more interested in you because you're a somebody.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
And so I guess it's a loss of perspective that these guys are facing. And that's a common teen problem, but unfortunately, like, they have access to, firearms and so forth. But I mean, we need them to have access to firearms, because otherwise it's not America. And, it's kind of sucks, but, because we need access to firearms, but to protect ourselves and our families and so forth. But, it is unfortunate that obviously those kids are in that situation. And if I guess, tell them that there's more perspective, and if they had more masculine role models, keeping them from going down these rabbit holes, because that's what it is. I mean, they're just getting stuck in the cycle and going down this rabbit hole. And if you had somebody be like, maybe you need to go play outside, whatever, you need to go do something, and and not be just morose and fixate on yourself, because that's what they're doing. Like, they're fixating on their problems.
Exactly. So. Yeah. And it's a lack of hope, right? I think that's the thing that drives these type of things. And it's sad though, because I think that so many guys today, like you said, they don't have the perspective. They don't realize, and I feel like there's a lot of echo chambers out there. I don't know if you've seen a lot of like the black pill stuff and the like incel kind of community stuff, where I've tried to debate some of these guys sometimes, and it's such an echo chamber. So many of them just believe that looks is the only thing that matters. So so my life is hopeless. I have no chance of attracting a mate. I'll just be a loser my whole life. And, you know, and they just believe that because it's crabs in a bucket, and then they lose hope. And that's where I fear that, like, we're going to see more of this kind of violence that's coming from these kind of breeding grounds. And, you know, I feel like that's why I'm kind of behind. I'm so much behind this cause, is I feel like this is the way that we can, if we can lift, you know, men up and teach them how to be men, then they will get out of that pit, and we're going to prevent that, you know, that catastrophe that could come in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you can't prevent bad things from happening. Like, I always kind of laugh at, like, everybody's like, there's always a war on something that's been around for all of human history. You know, like we're gonna end violence. Okay, that's not real. You know, like something, we're gonna end hunger. Okay, well, there's always been someone who's hungry. That's not a real. Why don't you just not be dramatic? You know, but I mean, there's going to be more school shootings. There's going to be. I'm actually always amazed that more people don't go crazy.
That's true. Yeah,
there's so many people in society, and so many people have a rough time, and there's stuff that I don't like. I mean, I've been really angry. You know, I mean, I have a pretty cool life now, but when I was driving a delivery truck all day, you know, I was a much angrier guy. And, you know, so I think there's a lot of things that you come up with where you don't feel like you have a lot of options. And I do think that it is real. And the problem that they're addressing in many cases are real. There are problems in the world. It's not like we have endless opportunity always, and, you know, everyone can be super successful and all that. I mean, some people are going to have crappy lives, and we obviously, the more people you can encourage to not think that way, the better.
Right.
You know, but you know, there are things in society that are changing that you can't control, and so you know, I just read this book. I guess I'll put it up because I have it here. But I just finished that book, Flow.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, there's some stuff good. There's some good stuff and bad stuff in there. It was just something I was interested in, and one of the things he talks about in that book is that you know, obviously, you control your experience of things. You know, you can be, you know, in a low status situation in society, and but if you find something that engages you within that area. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, he was talking about happiness is about being in engagement, being engaged. And most people are looking for contentedness. I like to think there's a difference between looking achievement and contentedness. You know, like, I'm looking for achievement, but
Right.
Most people would be happy if they're just like, my life is pretty good. I'm all right with things, the way things are going right now. And the way that he's saying that you achieve that is that you get, you know, in these patterns where you are engaged by something. You know, you could be a poor guy, but you're a poor guy who really likes working on cars.
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah.
really into working on cars. Or, you know, you're you know, an incel, but you're really good with computers. And you're like, you find a way to make money or to do something that, like, really engages you. And I think that that's what you're really looking for in many of these cases, that they need to find something that makes them happy. You know, because, I mean, it's a reality too. People think that they're all guaranteed mates.
Right. Yeah.
They're all guaranteed mates, and they're all guaranteed riches and whatever. And in reality, I mean, you think about, like, the early Americans. I mean, dudes would come over and work in a coal mine for like 40 years,
right.
and die, you know, and then die of some disease from being in the coal mine for 40 years. I mean, that was life, you know. And the same thing, like, you guys going on these whaling ships. Well, you're not going to have a wife. You're going to be in a whaling ship. You're probably going to die in a whaling ship, you know, but you had an adventure. You know, your life was an adventure. I mean, life isn't always, we're not all guaranteed to be super happy. And I don't think that, you know, you necessarily need to go out and hurt a lot of people just because, you know, you didn't get the best, you know, then you can still become captain of the whaling ship, I guess, you know?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. That does make sense. And historically, right, I forget, I saw this article, I can't remember where it was, but I don't remember the exact stats, but it was something like for every, maybe this was like 15,000 years ago, for every one woman, or for every one man that reproduced, like 17 women reproduced. It was something like that. It was a very skewed number, where it was like majority of men did not reproduce, but way more women did, because women were selecting the top tier men. And so, and it's actually skewed more in society today where there's more opportunity. But if you go back in time, right, especially, where the world was a much more violent place, really, like, you were more like you were going to have courage, because you're going to have to die. You're going to have to risk, fighting another man in order to get that mating opportunity. And the man, the successful man would be mating with multitude of women, and most guys were going to get nothing. That was just how it played out.
Yeah. Or maybe he just finds the one woman, but he has like 5 or 10 babies, and so like that's how society continues. And although the other guys, they just, you got to find another way to be happy, I guess. Maybe if that's not going to work out for you, maybe you have to. Well, is that the only thing in life?
Right.
Is that we're just, is that the only thing we have in life, or do you have more to offer?
Right. And even, do we give up just because? I think what you said earlier was a good point. It's like, do we give up just because we can't? We think we can't be the best, or, at least, like, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging.
Sure.
I'm just going to give up and be like, oh, I don't think I can win this fight. So,
Yeah. Do what you can. I mean, like, there are people, ain't stupid, but it just ended and everybody was watching Game of Thrones. So, like, you have the perfect example is like the dwarf. That's a shit sandwich that life gave you, and then okay, well, you can be somebody. You're a dwarf, all right, but you can still be somebody. You can find a way to be somebody and be important in the world, even if you have some disadvantages.
Yeah, I think that's that's a real interesting one too, because I think I brought it up when I was talking to some people in the kind of incel community when I was trying to do one of those discussions with them, debates. And I was like, this dude I didn't watch Game of Thrones, but I saw like a few episodes, and he's like, for what he was kind of a badass. There are some scenes where he's like a badass. I know there's some places where he like is the joke of the thing, but he was a badass at some certain points. But the actor himself, right? I mean, I'm driving through LA and I see him on big fucking billboards, right? And I'm thinking, like, here's this guy. I mean, he's making millions of dollars. Like, he got dealt a really bad hand, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that this dude also doesn't have any trouble getting laid, even though he's a dwarf. I mean, he's a fucking star of one of the most popular shows on television. Like, so it just, when I see guys that are complaining, they're like, oh, whatever, my chin is not, I don't have a masculine jawline. I'm like, if this dude that is a dwarf like can make it, then there's just no excuse. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, oh, you're a full height human being, like, amazing. Look at all the wealth you have.
Yeah, cool. Well, I guess we should probably get this wrap this up here. One thing I wanted to ask you though before we go is some books that you recommend. What are kind of your personal favorite books, or books that you think that men should read? I mean, obviously your books, like, definitely, guys, by the way,
just those. That's all you need. I mean, like, it came up in an interview the other day, so I guess I really like Jack London. I think that's what started me down this path as far as fiction goes. And then there were a lot of obvious books that are kind of in the bibliography of the way of men. I read some books on honor, and I think the classics. Like some of the ancient Roman and classics of the Roman and Greek classics. I think classics are a lot better than a lot of modern stuff. Obviously for philosophy. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Nietzsche. So his the one that I like is I can't remember the one I like. Obviously, Beyond Good and Evil is huge, but there's one that goes before it that I like better. But I pulled actually a lot of stuff from, but I'm spacing on it right now. But Beyond Good and Evil, and then you read some of his basic stuff. I think I might have even said what order to read him in More Complete Beast. But Zarathustra is an awesome book, but I think you have to know what he's talking about before you read it, because others is just crazy.
That one. Like, I had to go through and like I listened to the audio like I think 2 or 3 times, and I had to slow it down and like really stop for a minute, but it was good.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, if you already know what he's talking about, you're already kind of like, I see where you're going with this. I mean, now it's like, I feel like he and I are on the same page about so much stuff that I'm like, I'll listen to Zarathustra and be like laughing, like, oh, that was good,
Yeah.
you know. But I think just it maybe not the right one to start with, more like Beyond Good and Evil or something.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, guys, definitely.
It's Genealogy of Morals. I just got it.
Genealogy of Morals.
Yeah.
I haven't read that one yet. I'll have to take a look
The
at
first essay in it is where I think he explains a lot of the ideas that are in the other books.
Yeah. I feel like philosophy is a really important thing to study, because
absolutely,
it's all the same problems that we like. It's already been solved, or it's already been thought about, right?
Yes.
Not that anything is completely solved, but
yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, guys, definitely check out, like I said, Jack's books, The Way of Man, More Complete Beast, Becoming a Barbarian. You'll really enjoy those books for sure. There's audio versions as well. I like to listen to audio, so definitely get those books. And then anything else that you'd like them to visit, I'd say your Instagram page is pretty damn impressive. It's inspiring. It's like
cool. I mean, I went to art school originally. I mean, so it's a visual project for me, and so I really like Instagram, and also that people don't just, Twitter and all these things. People are just bitching each other all the time, and I like Instagram is just like, here's some art and some good pictures, and I like that. So thanks. I've been writing more on there recently too. I've been blogging a little bit on Instagram, which has been nice. And today actually. I was actually couldn't wait to get out of this podcast because I drove out and recorded. I did a voice presentation of Shelley's Ozymandias.
Okay, yeah.
The poem, and because I've been like, maybe I'll do poetry readings on Instagram for a while, and so like I drove out to this site that I wanted to do it at and recorded it and acted it out. So I'm kind of excited about that. That's going to be my Instagram post for today. But cool. But yeah, so yeah, I think that's Instagram, and obviously my website, jack-donovan.com.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Awesome, guys. Go check it out. Cool. And we should do something. I noticed also you've got the leather bracers.
Oh, my cuffs. Yeah.
I thought it's funny because I was I'd read your books, right? And I just like at some point in time I was like, I feel like I want to have like a warrior kind of bracer, like Hercules or something, and I couldn't find them. Like I finally found this guy in Istanbul and I've got like 4 sets of them now. And then I was looking at your Instagram post and I was like, all right, Jack's got it too. This is awesome. So
yeah. Well, the secret is they make your forearm shorter.
Yeah.
So it adds kind of like some depth, so some like weight and gravitas to your arm, I think, and that's why I really like them. And also, they just fucking look cool. So.
Yeah, exactly. I like it. All right, Jack. Well, it was great meeting you, and wish you the best. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, just let me know. And guys, go check out Jack's stuff. This is how you become a man. So go do it.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
All right, take care.